Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing? My name is Brant Hunt, and my channel is Discerning What is True. And we're going to have a live show today with Phil Langdon. We've just simply, it's another talk with Phil Langdon I wrote here because this allows what I would call just to allow questions on various topics, so to speak. So I'll let Phil Langdon introduce himself, and we'll go from there.
Okay, hi, I'm Phil Langdon from London. I'm 53. I've had spiritual ascension 9 years ago, and I write about it and talk about it, and that's what we discuss effectively and essentially with Brand here.
Thank you, Phil. So I have some questions here. I actually have quite a few of them, but I don't know if we'll get through them. It depends. Audience here. Anyone that wants to write a question is welcome to ask questions here. This is your time to ask deeper questions or just questions you don't understand what this whole place is all about. That is where we're at and what we're about on this planet. So I wanted to ask. This is becoming. I've seen things when I talk to people or interject with people. There's a whole deal what I call the issue of trauma, and
Yeah.
and what is trauma in this life, which we'll talk about, and then is it due to another question I have here is it due to basically a wake up call for us to begin to explore about why we're here? So
I guess, I mean, trauma, everybody gets traumatized at some point. It's automatic because, we're all born completely ignorant for a start. And because most of us receive a fair love and attention from our parents, we expect that to continue. And I think there's a disjoint with a lot of people as they go from childhood to adulthood. And that caring and what have you isn't there anymore. I notice a lot of people turn to religion as they approach their 20s, which is an interesting thing to see because they're looking for something deeper in life than the commercial presentation, that most young people put up with, as it were. Traumatizing is a massive subject. It's a real key issue with spiritual learning, apparently. Because I read out before what are called elemental tests. And these tests are the worst things that can happen to you in life. They're not really tests. I don't like using the term test because all it is either stuff in life that you have to deal with or you go under. You either sink or swim. And when it sorry, Brent, go on.
That's all right. I was interjecting. I'm just going to say simply is that it seems as though people will actually say, well, they'll say this idea, well, it's part of my script while I'm here. Also, the deal with Trump.
You can. I mean, most people in the New Age will tell you that these things are planned, and a lot of near-death experiences will tell you plan your life and you plan every event in it. That's fair enough from that point of view, but when you're in your life, you are now in the woods. You're no longer out of the woods, as it were. You know the expression, I can't see the woods for the trees.
Right.
So when you're in the woods, you can't see everything all at once because the trees immediately in front of you are blocking your view of the other trees behind. So you can only see everything at once when you're out of it. So it's very easy to say when you're having a near-death experience, how easy it is to see life from that perspective and that you had all these things planned. But in life, they come at you randomly. They are effectively random. Whether you planned it or not, it has nothing to do with it anymore because you don't know that. When you're born, you forget everything that you planned, apparently. So it's all random. So these random events are traumatizing events we're talking about at the moment. I'm talking about elemental tests. These are the issues in life that traumatize us. No matter how old we are, they'll traumatize us. And the issue of rising above one's physical nature into spiritual life is about recognizing these traumatic patterns, and your responses are psychological not spiritual. So
Ah,
there's a terrible lack of understanding in the world in terms of learning, in that there is a great distinction between the spiritual nature and your physical psychological makeup. They're completely different, but they are linked. And you engage in your life to the point where you think you are your body and you think you are your emotions. But as
right,
you grow up, you realize you are not these things. They are just machinations of the physical process. And physical process, if we want to understand where that comes from, we need to look at the creative principle, which is another issue. Because people want to find a way out of this idea of having to go through these traumatic experiences, because nobody wants them. Who would want
right,
that? If I told you tomorrow you're going to have the worst experience of your life, you're going to think, oh God, I want to try and avoid that. You
right. You
know,
actually drive a different place, a different path, or whatever, or
yeah,
uh, stay at home or whatever, so you won't have to. You avoid it, so to speak, if you think something's going to.
yeah. So,
Yeah,
I think in all these traumas, whatever the trauma is, the real, if you want to call it a lesson, I don't like calling it that because it means you've been set up. It suggests you've been put into a position on purpose, which is kind of cruel. That
yeah,
strikes me as cruel. Um, so if we understand these events are random, and then they're not intending to harm us as such personally, but we end up taking it personally. The more immature we are, I've noticed the difference between immaturity and maturity is when you're immature, you take everything personally, but when you're mature, you realize it's just machinations. It's just automatic processes that you got caught
right,
up in.
right,
And I try and see it like, how do you feel about that? Well, a lot of people get bitter and angry that they had to waste their time with something that was traumatic because it doesn't give you anything good as such. It's not a benefit as such. It
Or they
tries to
see it,
drag,
or they see it as not giving a benefit in some ways. Is
yeah,
that
but
what you're
it
saying?
tries to drag you into its drama. All these
Right,
traumas are dramas.
right. Interesting.
And
Trauma is a drama. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But to ask a regular person to rise above that trauma, if it's a very profound trauma, is a hell of a thing to ask, because you're
uh,
asking them to understand their spiritual nature before they've understood it, and that is a big deal in my mind. It's one of the things that can really put you off life. That when you hear some people who have near death experiences, they remember before coming into their life, they say they chose not to come into the life, but they were forced. And you can understand why, because if life on earth is just a sort of living nightmare, from
right,
one nightmare to the next, which is
right,
most people's lives, I feel, that
right,
you get the impression that you have to realize after a while that you must detach from physical processes and the nature of physical life, because it's brutal. And that is not spiritual nature. That's nothing to do with us as such. It's the way it is. So the body you've been given as an example is a beast. It's not a kind entity. It is in fact a demon. So the creative principle is the chief of demons who's created all these things. You'll read it in Gnostic texts. All
right,
he can do is create demons, and that's
right,
what we are when we're born. Nobody
right.
wants to call us demons because they like, obviously your parents love you when you're born. They're not going to think of you as a demon. It's just it's just a way. It's just a way of categorizing the nature of things. So the physical nature is bestial and demonic, and it only seeks self-gratification without the heightened thought-provoked spiritual nature, which is understanding,
Right,
deeper than the physical level that causes nothing but trauma.
right,
And the reason I feel for people so much is because I know they've not experienced their own spiritual nature and how blissful that is to have a comparison. So when they go through traumatic experiences,
right,
I
right,
understand if they go down. Some people commit suicide because it's so bloody awful and all this sort of thing. And they don't know their own spiritual nature, so they have no comparison to say, well, that was just an experience. It's gone. I don't need to repeat it over and over in my mind because it's not happening now. It was the past. There's all
right,
sorts of other things to do with trauma that have to do with processing. and attachment. So
Right.
Buddha says the root of all suffering is attachment, of course, because he realized his own spiritual nature and doesn't need to attach to any other physical process. But you can only do that if you realize your spiritual nature, hence the encouragement to do so, because then you
Right.
won't go down. It will not take you down. It will not bring you down. You won't drown in it.
Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah, I have. I've got to. I want to share this. This really points out something really critical. I watched a video a couple of. Well, actually, I watched it last night. A deal with it. But what happened was, this happened in Georgia, off the beach. That is, and it was a lady, and she basically what happened was she was all by herself. She thought she was, and she took what we would call a sexual toy, and she was not, was by herself again, like she thought. And what took place was simply is that she felt there's nothing wrong until um, she had a couple policemen come to the restaurant she was at afterwards and arrest her. And this is basically has been taped by the police, and you can see the trauma with this particular woman. Please don't do this to me. Please don't do this to me. Well, we have to arrest you because this is indecent exposure. And she said, there was no one around, such and such. And she said,
Yeah.
well, there was someone who complained and said that you were doing such and such, and we had children around, such and such. And so what happened is simply they interviewed, she killed herself.
I heard.
So what happened was that the neighbor was saying simply is it was a trauma. So that's why you could tell by her talks and her pleads for us, please don't do this to me, because apparently it was such maybe it's because of Christian background or something in her background and such. You're not supposed to do this, and then she explored to do this, whatever. It
Mm.
it basically affected her when they were interviewing her, and it's almost as though it was what I call a blame, shame, and guilt, which is instituted what I see that many things the church does is that they use what I call as psychology twisting it, is to blame people, to shame them, and make them feel guilty about something.
Yeah.
And so what happened was simply is a year and a half later, um, the neighbor um, who lived by her said that basically it got worse and worse with her. Her life went downhill ever since then. And she eventually shot herself and killed herself. You see.
Right.
And so
Well,
so this is a traumatic, to me, it's a traumatic deal when this was actually done to her.
mm.
Now, is that preventable? Well, if she knew her, as you're saying, her spiritual, who she is, it would have not have had a traumatic event upon her. Am I
No.
correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a
And
shame.
it
That
is.
is a
It
real
is.
shame. It's down to her reactions, obviously. I mean, I don't know what she was thinking in the first place, but I don't see that really matters a great deal. You know that she did something like that in her own private, personal way.
Right.
Um,
She thought she was alone. So I don't know if
yeah,
again you're looking at you know the key is simply is that if you do anything in public, you risk of getting in trouble. If you do that in your home, there's basically not an issue. But
yeah,
if, so to speak, but if it's done on the public perspective, you naturally can get in trouble, and that's why the police. But anyway, I don't want to go a whole lot into it. But what I'm trying to say
sure,
simply is what the neighbor was saying. He said basically it was all downhill. He saw
right,
that in her, and
yeah,
so she took that
she,
far harder than it should have been,
yeah,
personally,
she,
everything, and pushed that in within herself and blamed herself and
yeah,
shamed herself to the point that she decided there's no purpose in living.
bizarre. I find that quite bizarre. I mean, she must have been prone to that in the first place, and it just took one trigger to set it off.
I think
What?
it is. I think that's what I think it has a lot to do. I wish that I think it was part of what I call Christian programming that, is probably, you know, I guess in some way she felt she was told not to do these type of things. So, and suppose in a Christian home, and that's my theory. Okay, it's not the fact, but
Yeah.
my thinking simply is, I know even within my own self that there are things that you become the judge in your life, and you begin to shame yourself. You begin to see yourself, well, I must have did something wrong here. I must be inferior or something. And so you begin to have what I call despair or depression, so to speak, because I've
Yeah.
seen it in my life, you see,
Yeah.
because of a
When you,
intense part of this whole apparatus called Christianity itself, and how
yeah,
it's
when you,
drilled into children's lives, you see.
I,
So
yeah,
uh,
they don't teach you to love yourself.
no, they don't. They surely
That,
don't.
that's a really powerful thing. Loving yourself and being kind to yourself is extreme. We do have a relationship with ourselves, and that
Right.
woman's relationship with herself failed through somebody else's interjection. And that shouldn't happen. It really shouldn't.
No, I
Um,
think this simply is that even the when I went to the funeral uh, last week of my cousin,
yeah,
uh, the first song they sang was, these are Christians. The first song they sang was "Amazing Grace,"
right.
but um, the words are simply is the word called wretch is in that part of the a song,
Mm,
as even though I am a wretch, such and such amazing grace. Well, you can see
yeah,
that form of
yeah,
programming even in a song is saying something. And even we know that John Calvin taught simply is we're like worms. We're nothing to God. It's like, where do you get that at? See,
yeah,
this is whole beat down of
yeah.
somebody else.
I think it's the language in the Bible, the way it's written. If you take it uh, at face value, you'll go around thinking that it's okay to punish others in your community because you have the authority of God, and
Right,
you're righteous. Therefore, you can point out those who aren't.
right.
Because it suggests that in the Bible when you read the narrative, it says, and when people do this, you should point out and be
Well, yeah,
strong with
yes,
the
very much
Lord and
so.
all this sort of thing.
Right. If
No,
you go take them, you take them in front of the first you meet with them privately, and
yeah,
then if they refuse to such and such, you then meet with them with supposedly elders of the church, and if that doesn't work, you bring them before a congregation that is in front of your peers, which is
yeah,
actually enormously used to break someone
yeah,
uh, in a way.
yeah, yeah. That's right.
You know,
It's part of the I suppose you
programming.
call it a tradition where
Yes,
religion that's accepted in general around you, you need to accept it. For some, Islam, for instance, wants everybody else to be Islamic.
right,
Christians want everybody else to be Christian. They want everyone to be like them,
right,
which is an insecurity. It's a terrible insecurity. I feel it's partly born out of the fact that Christianity is very difficult to prove, of course,
right.
which is one of the things I'm trying to do as well. But yeah, naming and shaming is a classic religious psychological ploy to keep
Right.
you in line. Yeah, keep you in line
And that
without.
and as I've been reading from not only from Gerald Macy but also from Kuhn, and how I'm trying to remember because I've been reading so much that I'm just getting it everywhere. Uh, how this whole apparatus was applied many years ago, and
Mm,
which has led to this particular thing because Christianity itself is just basically pietism. That is pietism. That is a way of looking of yourself better than others. It's a piety, and also you're acting spiritual or religious or whatever. When
yeah,
reality simply is you're acting. You're
yeah,
not living. You're acting. So,
yeah, yeah,
so you're actually fooling your own self. You
yeah,
see. in that home programming.
Yeah.
And as far as it seems as though, and as I continue to read this, what I was reading, this was eventually what they call the destruction of uh, the the Greek philosophy at this point, because they tried to fight it back and they failed because the
Mm.
masses bought into this whole emotional feelings as though God came down and sent his son here physically
Yeah.
to, and that comes reveals something. Oh, this is a great such and such. When in reality, it has nothing to do with the physical. It has to do with the esoteric perspective. But this is
Yeah.
what happened. It was turned upside down, and it's
Yeah.
anyway. I won't go in a lot in it, but I've just been reading this some works by Gerald Macy and also Kuhn, and they point out simply it was just like it took off, and there were. And the interesting thing also for those who get into this, but there were two key people who were actually at the Alexander School, that is the library there, who were inspirational, that is, inspired in a way, which were Eusebius was one of the guys there, and the other guy just escaped my mind. Origen was the other guy, and it's interesting that they could have stopped this, but they didn't.
Mm.
I don't. They seemed that they were actually Greek, Hellenistic Greeks. This is what, and they allowed the door. They opened the door for this to happen. Okay,
Mm.
and then eventually this is what. Then it became a physical deal that supposedly Jesus came here, such and such, when there's
Mm.
no evidence that Jesus ever came here on this planet. You see,
Mm.
it was all. See, again, it's all to do with esoteric, not exoteric, such and such. And this is what people struggle with when they read the Bible,
Yeah.
because they've been taught to read it literally. But it's
Yeah.
not just that. It's
Yeah.
it's all of what we read is we actually see as literal, if you follow what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's why I have an issue with the language in the Bible. I wish it was written in a more direct form.
Right,
Um, I understand why they're doing that, and there's probably reasons that we've forgotten. Maybe they had to hide certain things, so they used to record all their material in riddles
right,
to contain it, but it meant nobody else could understand what they were talking about. And it's very unfortunate when that gets into the public hands, because they want it to be accessible. And if it's a load of riddles and it's not accessible and you need special understanding to understand it, what you've got are a bunch of monkeys holding Shakespearean plays.
right,
That's what you've got, unfortunately. And they think they know what they're reading. It's very, very unfortunate that there's a terrible lack in the crowd mentality. There's a lack of will for discernment and detail.
right,
Because when you point out the details, all of a sudden you're going to have to start building a new picture of what the text are representing. And if they're not representing that in their church, it's going to hurt them, because they have
right.
emotional associations with their understandings. So if you
And they
change
also
their
have what I
understanding,
call if you're grown up in this type of thing, you have the emotional part of having eventually when you begin to see some of these things, you have to begin to say, I've got to, I got to leave this place. I've got to go somewhere else. Um, because that was your whole,
yeah,
that was what you laid your whole foundation of your life, supposedly, if you grew up in the church, you see.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and so, and then
applicable,
also, go
yeah.
ahead.
Just to
Go ahead.
say, it's applicable to any scenario you grow up in and establish yourself in, and see the adults around you who are older than you. Seemingly, they've established these things, and they're walking around. They're perfectly confident that what they're saying is absolutely true. So you trust them. They're your
Right,
family. Why would you not trust them? And all of a sudden, the carpet gets ripped out from underneath you. That's traumatic, like we were
correct.
talking earlier. And of course, there's no learning in those terms to disassociate yourself from your emotions, to detach
Right,
yourself from your physical nature, because that's part of the process of becoming spiritual as well, realizing that you are not the physical nature and it is
right,
just a beast you're riding. So
right.
that is never emphasized.
No,
It
it
is
is
to a
not.
certain
Well,
extent.
it's said somewhat, but it's not in the right way. It's almost as though they would say simply is that your body, wants to do these things, and which a lot of it has to do with, in their particular respect, is to do with sexual immorality, so to speak,
Yeah,
because that's how
yeah,
they emphasize that. You see, they don't
yeah.
talk
But
about other things. You see, that's the whole purpose, so to speak. So, go ahead.
yeah, I think the human condition overshadows the understanding behind how sex fits into religion. You know, because when we're young, we want to have sex with everybody we meet. You know, it's
Right,
normal. It's perfectly normal psychologically to do that.
right,
But as you get older, you realize, you know, that it's the content that counts. It's not the way somebody looks.
right,
Um, um, and yeah, I've forgotten exactly what I was going to say. I'm just making the point that Christianity tends to, they'll say, yeah, sex in marriage is okay because it's God,
right,
you know, God is there. However, there's an underlying pretense that all sex is bad.
right.
I feel, and that dealing with sexuality is not something we should be doing because it's of the devil. The devil made that. Therefore, don't
Right.
spend too much time on it. You know, we'll procreate, but you know, we'll get the dirty deed out of the way.
That's
You know?
correct. That's right, because that's the whole apparatus of what you call in the Christian perspective is simply is to have sex in order to procreate. That's the only reason why they someone gets in bed together with another person.
Aye,
That is, if they love one another, and
yeah,
that's not the whole picture. Um,
right.
you see, uh, and it's a form of uh, intimacy that allows the person to be such and such to be real in that place.
Yeah,
And yeah, go
just to
ahead. You want
say,
to say something?
don't forget. I mean, we forget that we live now in a world of mass media. Go back 200 years.
Right.
That it's not the same at all.
No.
Who did you meet to have sex with 200 years ago? Very few people.
Correct.
Very few people. You might have gone to a party if you were in a well-to-do society. Maybe imagine 1805. How many friends do you have? What is there any media? No, there's no such thing as media. There's no
No.
influence. There's
No.
no women taking their clothes off every 5 seconds,
No.
shoving it in your face every 5 seconds,
Right.
like we have today.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so today it's an even bigger problem that we can't detach from these things and recognize what they are because it's all about presentation these days. You know, not about content anymore. I feel.
it's all about yeah, yeah, and you have the entertainment programming and all that programming, entertainment, even all types of things that take place. For example, even in the Super Bowl, that's people look forward to the halftime show between the Super Bowl. I don't know if you follow what I'm saying, but the
Yeah,
sport here is football,
yeah,
and it's up. And if you go back, I think I was reading something in the past, 200 years ago, um, because there was nobody even living here, roughly 200 years ago in America. So
right.
it was usually, if you had a neighbor or such and such, that was, and a lot of people lived out in the woods, at the farm. There was no, at first, they developed, but
Yeah,
some more towns, correct, which we know that simply is that pretty much all cities were put, ley lines were critical because that's where cities were started.
mm,
Uh, and
yeah,
so, and then people congregate there. But then there were other people who went out into the farmland, such and such. And so, who are they going to meet? Well, the only people
yeah,
they're going to meet is who they associate with, which is going to be one is
yeah,
either with church, because
yeah,
that's the only meeting place, so to speak, that you get together a woman and a man, so to speak.
yeah,
If you do with work situation, it's going to be pretty much all men,
yeah,
um, and if it's something to do with women's work, such as to be all women, you see.
yeah,
So there was even the idea that many groups, religious groups, and I don't want to get off too much of a tangent, but they would have the men sitting on one side and the women on one other side. You get that? So you see how this is a whole the whole perspective as though we don't want any intermeaning intermenting with each other, so to speak, because we see that a female or a male, both sides, could be a stumbling block, so to speak, in your
Yeah.
Christian life, you see.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to emphasize the fact that human beings are easily suggestible. You only have to show somebody something and it will affect them immediately. It will affect them. The question is how will they react to it? So those, let's say, just take a situation in a church, for instance. You've mentioned men and women on opposite sides, right? Those women, they're going to be dressed in nice clothing and
Right.
pleasant clothes, and they're not going to be suggesting that they are Jezebels
No,
or anything like that. Right
no,
now, dress them all as prostitutes.
right.
Just as a thought experiment, dress them all as prostitutes and have them in the same situation, and notice that the men are going to be aroused. It cannot be
Correct.
helped. It
Right.
can't be helped. It's not a problem. The problem only comes in the reaction. So if
Yes,
all those men are
because
already married, then
right,
they're hopefully not going to go off and have sex with these prostitutes.
right, right.
What I'm saying is that humans are so easily suggestible, um, that
Do you think it's because of a lack of fortitude within their own moral self?
I just think there's a lack of emphasis in life in general, to recognize these features of our nature and to realize that we can control them and stand above them. I've heard too many excuses. I can't help it. It's the way I am. That,
Yeah,
that
that's
that's
a
an
very right.
that's an
Yeah, that's
excuse.
excuse, right.
What do you mean it's the way you are?
Reality.
Well, there's this thing called transformation and changing your understanding. It will change your behavior. So what those people
Right,
are saying is they cannot change their behavior because they don't want to accept reality.
right,
You
right.
know,
That's
um,
the whole crux of the whole thing.
yeah. And I'm constantly thinking of your original theme of trauma and the fact that you don't have to engage with trauma. You don't have to allow it, so to speak, because all these events really have nothing to do with you. If you didn't create them, there's nothing to think about. For instance, somebody brings a trouble to your door. Well, it has nothing to do with you.
Do with you, right,
Nothing,
right,
and even if they get in your face for 5 minutes, once they've gone, that's it, they've gone.
right.
If that became a traumatic event, you're still thinking about it. And there's a thing with thoughts as well. It's very, very powerful to recognize that you are more like the crystal blue sky that goes on forever, that has no thoughts in it fundamentally. But when a cloud comes by, that is like a thought. Clouds
Right,
always dissipate. So you are not your thoughts, you are the mind that thinks.
right,
This trauma, this idea of trauma is a repeating pattern of thinking the same thing over and over again, repeating what happened, but it hasn't happened again. It's done. It's gone. Why are you
right.
still thinking about it? Well, how do you feel about the thought? It's the way you attach your emotions to your thought. If I associate good thoughts with my mother, I'm thinking of my mother right now.
Right,
I like my mother.
right,
I'm not troubled by thinking about her. Now
right.
I'm going to think of the devil. Right. When I think of the devil, I'm troubled by the fact that I'm thinking of the devil. Well, you don't have to be
Correct.
troubled by your thoughts. You can simply think of them without the emotional attachment and just think, I see, that's what you're like. I have nothing to do with you. Moving on. I'm not still engaging with the same thought over and over again, which is what trauma is all about, it seems.
You think it's to do with basically planting a seed that is
It's not
within your
knowing.
mind? I mean, this is do you see that has and how it germinates and it flowers forth? That is, it could be a plant is beneficial, or it could be a weed, so to speak. If you see what I'm saying,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
you entertain this in your own head and you allow it to mesmerize you in some ways, and it's almost as though it intertwines in you and actually begins to stifle you if you think about it
Right,
that
but
way.
only if you feel bad about that thought. If you can
Right.
simply allow the thought and recognize it's just a thought, you are not that thought. You're the
No.
one who's thinking about it, so you're completely different.
Well,
It,
I have thoughts, and I say, it comes in my mind, and I say, that's not me. You see, that's not me, because
yeah,
there'll be thoughts from the past, and so when you did such and such, da da da, something bad, and
yeah,
I said, well, that's not me now. That's
yeah.
not who I am. You
Yeah,
see.
you understand more now. Of course, we understand more as we get older. But one of the reasons, obviously, we think is because we don't understand something, so we chew over it. And I don't get it. I don't get it. So you're chewing. So the
Right.
idea of thinking associates with not understanding yet. When
Ah,
you when you understand it, it's like, oh, I see. I don't even think about that anymore.
right.
That's very, very powerful as well. Recognizing that you don't only think about things when you don't understand them. So they only cause trauma when you don't understand them, so to speak. Wait,
The other
so if,
thing is that,
yeah,
go. Were
no,
you
no, no,
finished?
no. I was just going to repeat myself basically.
Um, I noticed this simply is that we've talked about this, and in other words, to us, as you share the whole idea of ascension, which is the main goal, should be for all people to ascend. That is, or
Yeah,
to find out who they truly are.
yeah,
I remember when they used to say there was at an early age in school that from some particular writer that there was a divine spark in all men.
mm,
Okay, and that's no, you don't hear that anymore. I don't hear it anymore. Maybe I'm in the wrong circle, but there's always a divine spark or something within us. What it means is simply is that God is within us. You see,
yeah. You are. It's you. It's a reference to
right,
you, really,
right.
your spiritual nature. Yeah.
And what we've done simply is and I understand it's become separated, and what we need to do is bring it back together,
Hmm.
unite. You
Mm.
see, um, but I noticed that people have, when we talk about trauma, uh, that's a major issue. But the point simply is that they begin to measure on that, and instead of actually trying to ascend. In other words, I can see that in even when I'm talking about it, but I felt it simply needs to be brought out and talked about because simply is most people are trying to deal with their traumas because some of
Yeah.
those traumas create physical injuries or to your body.
Mm.
Um, you cause harm to yourself. A lot of times it isn't because of anything that anybody's done to you. Um, it's because your thoughts, your
Mm.
emotional holding on to those things that we've talked about that eventually creates certain things as maybe even cancer or other issues in your life that you struggle with
Mm.
because of those thoughts, you
Mm.
see. Because there's
Mm.
actually a particular psychologist here in America who's no longer living, but basically he was connecting a lot of these diseases and such, which what he would call is dis-ease with yourself.
Okay.
You're not at easement with yourself. So you're having these diseases, and they're wrecking your life. They're
Mm.
eventually physically having a detrimental part of your life. And then I see also this whole idea is people, like I said, like a divine spark. They don't do anything with it. Yeah, I'm a God. I'm okay, and they never make the next step. They don't
Yeah.
go and pursue that. They just said, and they just go on their merry way, and
Yeah.
it's like almost as though um, everything's okay with me. I'm okay because I'm with God. So it's just a breeze for me. They
Yeah.
don't, they don't take it seriously.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. They think it's already done,
Correct.
and they don't
And
have to
I
do
think that's
anything.
a lot to do with the new age perspective has basically, I think that this is as they saw that religion and Christianity was dying, so to speak, it seems as though those who manipulate this world, whatever,
Yeah.
came in and said, "Well, here's something else. Let's bring in a new thing here to create
Yeah.
this whole new age particular thinking." And because it's basically jumping in one hot pan. You're in a hot pan already in Christianity, so you jump in another hot pan that basically deal with New Age. In other words, it hasn't really solved anything. You're just in another dilemma, so to speak.
Hmm. Yeah. Of misunderstanding. Yeah. Of not understanding things for yourself. Yeah. There's too much oversimplification. And the oversimplification involves what you're supposed to do. The New Age will tell you that you're supposed to meditate without
Right.
explaining what meditation is, what it's for, how it works, why it works, and what exactly are you doing then? How long should you be spending on that? What's it for?
Right.
Why are you here again? You know, they're never going to tell you why you're here. So you're never going to work out what the meditation is for. They'll just tell you that you're supposed to meditate and that it's good for you. And in Christianity, the same oversimplification involves telling you that once you're baptized, that's it, you're saved
That's
by
it.
God. You
Right.
don't have to worry about finding heaven for yourself. You don't have to worry about understanding for yourself. God is the one who thinks for you. He knows everything. Just leave it to him. You know, you can carry on being as stupid as you are,
Right.
as dumb as anything. I mean, how dumb do you want to be? That's
Right.
entirely up to you.
Right.
You know, I'm not condescending anyone. I'm just saying we are born
No,
utterly stupid.
it's nothing to do with the condescending here. In
No,
fact, it's actually my feeling simply is sorrow, seeing how many people are um, actually get themselves messed up in that trauma, sort of get themselves so out of it, and then get back into it. In other words, they
yeah.
jump right back into the fire.
Yeah, that's normal. That's a normal thing for a person to do. Yeah, because they don't advance, they don't accumulate their understanding. I feel when you accumulate understanding, you end up in the spiritual realm automatically because it takes you there. Reasoning and logic takes you there by itself. It doesn't just stop at science; it goes beyond science, logic, and reason.
Well,
Um,
the whole idea is that people don't. They find the hardest thing. They don't want to think. They don't want to.
mm,
They don't want to think.
yeah, it's too
Human,
difficult.
it's too difficult. I don't want to. I don't want to interplay with two different issues here in my mind. I don't want to. I don't want to read anything. It's too hard. You know, I don't like to
Mm,
do hard things. It's like
yeah, there you go. There you go.
I
But it
don't
is.
like. So that's like a child. I don't. I'll do this, Daddy, but I don't want to do that because
Yeah,
that's
that's
hard. I don't like doing hard things. So
that's right.
so you're having a whole idea of adult being an adult human being, but yet there's a child in that that says, I don't. I'll do anything else. I'll paint the whole house, but I don't want to think.
Yeah,
You
that's
see,
right.
I no,
That's right.
I'll do. I'll
But
spend 20 or 30 hours or whatever it takes to do that. But I don't want to think about these things because it really bothers me. I don't, I don't
yeah,
like to think about that. I just want it to go
yeah,
away.
yeah.
See,
Learning for oneself is seems to bother people, but they, we forget that it's very easy to learn things. It's not a complication. It's not difficult. It just takes time. I think people don't like the fact that it takes time.
yes,
There's
that's right. They want it. Well, it's this whole framework we have. Instant everything, instant food. Microwave. All this. We don't want to prepare anything anymore. I think about,
yeah,
I think about my mom and all that she did during Thanksgiving or Christmas and all
yeah,
the work she put into it to
yeah,
just for one meal.
yes,
And it's like that was a part of the her heritage. And not only that, her upbringing was what it's about. But today, everything is simplistic. You snap your hands and it's there, or just
yeah,
order, da da da. Someone
yeah,
else will
yeah.
do it for you. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and,
Same with Christianity in the sense that you don't need to be saved once you're baptized. That's it, instant saving.
yeah, yeah.
Same principle.
The
Yeah. Um,
there was a. Let's see if I got some. I got. We just started. We talked about scripts. We talked about that. Let's see. Um, I think that this whole apparatus that we live in, or planet, um, is a place where I don't want to use that word because you just used it. You don't want to use that one, but it's a. I believe it simply is what you said. Once you become 40 years old, there is a change that takes place. Suddenly, you kind of. It's almost as though the dream part of you, or whatever has been happening for the first 40 years of your life, um, reality sort of sticks his finger up and says, "Hello, I'm here." So, in
mm,
a way, to kind of get your attention, and you do see people who are that age. What did I get myself into? Like,
yeah,
what did I get married for? What?
that's
When I
right.
have kids, and I'm like, oh, I work all my life or whatever, such and such, and yeah, I don't take any of it with me. Um, you know, which a lot of people, the whole glamorization of that also.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
whole, like you said, the whole idea simply is there was no media, 100 years ago. The only
right.
thing was a newspaper, so to speak.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
today everything is out there, and it's just like for you to look at, and it's just
yeah.
like you're bombarded by it.
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
and we kind of, I was going to say, what do you think that basically keeps people from the truth? But I think basically, as we've expounded a little bit on today in the thinking part, um, philosophy and logic, when you begin to look in these books and such, and the thinking, I don't, I think this simply is that people rather be entertained and be stimulated
Hmm.
instead of actually stimulating their own mind. In fact, it seems as though there's a poo-poo with your mind. You In fact, I see this everywhere with people's their thoughts, not thoughts, but what they say is that I just want to entertain myself. I just want to be in, I want to do what I want to do. You
Yeah,
know,
there's also the lack of proof that when you apply yourself in certain directions and invest yourself in certain things, that the benefit you're going to get from that is readily available for everyone to see. An example is that let's say a successful businessman becomes a CEO of a company, and
right?
all of a sudden, he gets blamed for the company going downhill when in fact it was just the commercial world changing. But the
Right.
company are now going to blame him for ruining their company.
Yes, right.
Um,
Right. He's the figurehead at the top, and you see this with the media too, as you said. Right.
yeah, yeah. I've lost track of what point I was making
You're
there.
going to say that the guy who gets blamed for running the company when things sort of go downhill.
Rather, what were you saying just before that yourself?
Oh,
You were asking, you were reading something there. You were asking something. I've just lost track of that.
yeah. I said, what do you think that keeps people from the truth? But that might be too far back. Then I said it was entertainment. People want to be stimulated, such and such.
Yeah,
Uh, they don't want to.
yeah, I
Just,
know. They don't realize that's what I was saying.
they
That
don't.
the idea is that man, the businessman
Right.
there, has spent years and years developing his personal success,
Right.
and all of a sudden, overnight, it's wiped out. And imagine a young person witnessing that on the news. That they're being told by their parents, go to school, get good qualifications, you get a good job and have a good life. And then they turn to the news and they see, here's a man who's done that, and look what's happened to him.
Right.
You see, so they think, well, hang on a minute, there's no guarantee. You can't guarantee anything. So what's the point in my investing myself in all these things if some idiot is just going to turn up and ruin it in 5 minutes? There's that going on as well in the world, and the fact that countries are sort of disintegrating, as it were, or presented as such.
Right.
You know, people leaving their countries because their regimes are no good and all this sort of thing. Where is the trust in any situation, in any establishment? Where's the trust gone? There used to be great trust in the establishments, the guilds, for instance. People used to revere guilds,
Right.
but nowadays, with the overly commercial and commercialization of everything, a lot of things have lost its value, and
Right.
some people don't want to go to university anymore because they see no point in having a degree. Well, when you do a degree, it develops you as a person, and it's not just a qualification on paper.
Right.
It does things to you that are very beneficial, but people don't know that unless they do it.
Right.
So what I'm saying is there's a great lack of well, if I'm looking for the truth, where are the people that have found it?
Right.
Show me the people that have genuinely found the truth. I want to hear them. I want to see that they know the truth. Where are these people?
Right.
You've got
And you
people over
will,
there
and that
saying,
is right, and that's basically like a needle in a haystack because
yeah,
basically you're not going to find them unless you seek out to find them. If you even
how
do that,
come the whole world is at war with itself If
Right.
the truth is available and people know it, why is the world at war with itself? Surely we should all know this truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where are the people to prove it? I'm one of the only ones who knows about this cloud, for instance. Nobody else
Right.
talks about
No
it.
one else talks about it. Right.
I don't know why. I don't know why all these gurus never mention it. This sort of thing. And so why would you trust them? Well, anyone looking for truth, who are they going to trust? How do they know to trust me or somebody else or whoever?
Well, I would say that the earnest person, those that truly are searching, and they're going to be pitfalls. They're going to be hurdles, as I call it, but they're going to be pitfalls. You're going to find out, oh, well, that was a mistake. But a
Yeah.
lot of people, what happens, a lot of people, Phil, is that they quit.
Mm,
Maybe they tried it once or twice, and then guess what? They quit. They no
mm.
longer, the zeal within them to find the truth is gone, because
Yeah.
they then put up their hands and say, well, I tried. And
Yeah.
it's like, but you
It's
didn't try. You just, you think it's going to come to you as you walk up to a grape tree and pick it off, and it's going to be ripe. It's going to be ready to eat.
yeah.
But you've
Just like
got
that.
to, but you've got to understand simply is you've got to search for these things and seek
Yeah.
those things out.
Yeah. And by searching for them, you develop them in yourself. The very act of the intention of seeking this kind of idea, this truth, is what leads you to it. It
Well, it's
does.
not only that, it's the proof of the pudding that you have that deep desire within you, that the goal is there and that you're pursuing it. And so
Yeah.
there's somehow what I would call a magnetic effect. It's a lack of
Yeah.
a better word, but simply is well, it's the same thing as simply as that you shoot an arrow at a bullseye. You aim for the bullseye. You aim
Yeah.
for the truth. You
That's
don't
right.
aim for the side over here, or there, or there. You aim for the truth. You seek the
Yeah.
truth. Unless you shoot your arrow that is pursuing the truth
Yeah.
and seeking those things, you're going to be off base, and you're going to go over here or there, and you're not. But that's also a part of the learning experience. You see,
Yeah.
you know,
True. Yeah. Right. Right. You get to hear what's right by listening to more than one person. You get to
right?
see, hang on a minute, two of these people said this weird thing, but all the others have said this, and they don't agree with that. So you start to see who is telling what kind of truth they're saying, how powerful it is, how piercing it is, how poignant it is.
Yes. Like for example, I went to seminary, and I don't know if you can see this. This is at the top here is called "False Views of the Person of Christ." Okay, so
Mm,
I'm, when I was going to seminary, I'm like, okay, I see, okay, and I accepted all this stuff, you see, because I'm looking at it, and I'm going to seminary, and they should know these things.
mm,
And so you have the group here that's the Evanisms, called they deny divine nature. You had the Arians, which would deny the divine nature also. And then you had a group called the Doists, denied human nature. And this is where I got this from reading the book from Alvin Boyd Cohn, and they're talking about, and also with Gerald Massey. Um, and these are people who got killed by Christians later
right.
on. Okay.
Great.
Okay. I don't know if you know that, but these
No.
are groups that were basically seen as heretics, and they were extinguished. When did we come up with the idea that we have religion that we actually have to destroy people because they
Yeah.
don't believe like we do?
Yeah. Yeah.
You see, and that come from the Old Testament. See, they're looking at it literal. God destroyed the city of Jericho when they
Yeah.
marched around such and such. God told them to take this such and such, these areas, the Moabites and all these
Yeah.
other people. But it was never meant to be literal. These are
It's,
stories.
it's a
And
very
this is what
interesting.
this, go ahead.
Yeah, it's an interesting technique to wipe people out because within one generation they'll be forgotten.
Correct.
If you look at the Holocaust, the Holocaust actually happened, And yet there are people not 70 years later now saying it never happened.
Right.
Within a very short space of time, the wiping groups of people out gets completely forgotten. It's a very unfortunate issue with humans. They forget their own history.
Well, part of it simply is that those books are not popular. Those get put to this. If someone does point out something. But anyway, this guy's name was Marcion, and
Mm,
this is roughly the same time. So what I gather simply, he is one who sees that simply is no human. What he's talking about here, he's saying that Jesus never basically came here.
mm,
He wasn't here on the physical aspect. He is divine. He's part of God's son. Then you have to ask yourself, wait a minute, why would God, I'm asking this is the question, why would God send his only son, so to speak? Because that's a great story. This is a way of getting headlines. God sends his
mm.
whole son and comes to this country of Israel, and he's
Yeah,
going to save his people, such and such.
yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, God is spirit. God never claims to be human.
Hmm.
Am I
That's right.
right?
That's right. That's right.
So this is what I would call the fallacy of Christianity, is that they emphasize the humanity of Jesus as being God, as though, but why would God doesn't God's not human. God is spirit,
Right.
and that's what resides within us,
Yeah.
the
Once
spirit.
again, when we don't understand the reality, the actual reality of the statements that are in the Bible, we can
Right.
easily misinterpret and misrepresent. So when it says God sent his only son, there's nothing more than a way of saying God illuminates people who are earthly.
Thank
God
you.
illuminates them with his son, so he sends his son to earth. It's this kind of language that people
So this,
don't
yeah.
realize.
This is the literal framework. You see, I'm
Mm,
dealing with the literal framework, but the reality simply is, I remember, okay, that's fine. These are guys, but then I realized later on, I said, wait a minute, uh, why is the church, the Roman Catholic Church, doing away with these people? In other words, why they're
mm,
killing them? Well, that's what they did in the Old Testament. I'm like, well, excuse me, but this is each person is a part of God. In other words, they
yeah,
came from God. So
yeah,
who are you to say let's destroy this other person? You can't
yeah.
make that. You can't do
That's
that.
that's right. That's the
It's asinine. Go ahead.
human political level of seeing things. Yeah, remove those who oppose you, like Hitler. Remove everyone who opposes you, and you look infallible all of a sudden, as
Right,
if there's no such thing as anyone who's going to challenge you.
right,
Yeah,
right.
it's that old technique again. The
And
church
it's
uses as
like,
well.
so this guy Marcion basically is considered a heretic. That's what he is. He's painted that way in the church. You see,
Mm, wow.
uh,
Oh,
and I it's a hard, actually. Daryl Macy somewhat. I enjoy what he's reading, what he's stating, but I'm trying to equal it out simply in his particular perspective. Is that you know yes, the Greeks philosophy failed at this time, and they
mm,
would say simply is a lack of nerve. Uh, what I sense and what he's sharing here is that the whole apparatus with people buying into this whole thing is like a mob rule or massive undertaking with people, and they suddenly are enamored with Jesus and da da da, and it's just like it's a beautiful story, and everything seems great, and they buy into it, and then what happens simply is the leadership, which is corrupt at the top, chooses to use this mob group of people to
mm,
destroy the library in Alexandria and
mm,
chooses to destroy other people. You see, that's of
mm,
God. You see,
mm,
they're the enemy.
mm.
You see, uh,
Yeah, yeah.
you mentioned stuff. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And I just thinking that there probably it sounds like an appeasement to the idea. Well, the masses want to go along with this. Let's go along with that because then they'll be in our favor.
Right.
It's working with mass opinion in a way, to suit yourself. I feel anyway.
You mentioned something that occurred with you after your ascension. You said something. You said it a couple of times, and I have not really digested it. you said something that affects your nerves. What do you mean by that?
What do you mean affects my nerves?
I guess in your some of your couple times we talked, and I've gone back and replayed them, and I think you said that after you had your ascension took place, you said something about it to do with your nerves. It changes, and I'm okay. I'm trying to figure out what you mean by that. Maybe I misplaced you in that thinking, or what? I don't know.
I'm not exactly sure
Okay,
what I said there. I'd need to know exactly what I said. There was a few shocks afterwards.
right,
Like for instance, when somebody removes your rose-tinted glasses in life, you know that film? I can't remember what it's called. It's a guy. He has a pair of glasses and he can see behind everything. He can see who's a robot and who's not.
right,
When he looks at an advertisement, it says it's something completely different. And he
correct,
takes the glasses off. He can see what everyone else can see,
right.
but he can
Oh yeah, yeah,
with the glasses on, he can see the reality, and
right,
that's what happens with the illumination. You see reality as it is, and on Earth, it's extremely shocking to see that, to realize that most people are living their lives for nothing.
right, right.
That's the biggest shock. They're all wasting their time, and you want to tell them that, but they don't want to listen to you.
No,
See, that's the
yeah,
main thing. That's what I realized immediately after. Every time I went to work, I imagined enormous piles of manure on the side of the road, and this
right,
manure represented the wastefulness of how people are and how they behave and what they're doing with their lives. Living your life, no problem. Everyone has to do that, but there
right,
is an ultimate purpose for that. And if you completely ignore and forget that, your life is for nothing overall.
right.
Really, in a way, it's for nothing. You may as well have not come.
Yeah,
The whole point of being here is to transform you into an angel. And
right,
if you're not going to do that, then you're basically wasting your life. You're wasting your time. And it's not a big deal. It's a perfectly normal thing to occur. That's what people don't realize. They think it's something way out there that is untouchable. They can't have anything to do with it.
right.
That's what's wrong as well. The disassociation with the reality of it is a problem. So they give
Well,
up.
yeah, they don't even try. They give up
No, that's right.
immediately.
Yeah,
I know.
Christians think it's done. People who are not Christian can't be bothered with it. So there's nothing else.
Right,
So both of them are wasting their time in a way,
right.
in this sort of sense.
I'm
Strangely.
I'm actually on Facebook and have roughly a couple hundred friends, although close friends probably no more than 10. I can talk about
Mm,
certain things,
mm,
and but they uh, they don't understand what I'm talking about, and they don't show any inclination because a lot of them are what I call have presuppositions. Their whole life they look at things and says that this can't be.
mm.
And so they it's before you look at it's before you come into something looking at something you say, oh, I have a presupposition because this can't be right, but yet you haven't looked into it. No, but I
Right,
know that simply so they've already made a judgment before they even made a judgment. What I mean,
right.
they've never looked into it at all. They've
Yeah,
already in their own mind they decided I'm not going to look into it.
yeah.
You know,
That's a lot like
which is really so sad about the whole thing.
yeah, that's a lot like having a thought that is a cloud and holding on to it rather than allowing it to pass by through your sky.
Yeah,
Having an opinion is like holding on to one of the clouds in your sky. It's not something you should be doing. They're allowed to move on. You're allowed to change your mind and develop and understand better. So someone like that doesn't want to advance because they don't want to let go of the clouds they've established. This is the cloud that I know about. I don't want it to leave
right,
my
right.
sky.
Yeah, I can understand the story here. I can understand why I'm here from this
Yeah, let me
particular
let,
junction,
let,
and
let me take. I'm
I
going to
don't
hold
want to
on to
let
that
go of
cloud.
that.
I'm going to
Right,
carry this cloud everywhere I go. This is my opinion right here.
right,
This is my
right,
cloud. Okay, well, there's a cloud that is the best cloud that you can hold on to, and it's the only cloud you should hold on to. The cloud of heaven is the ideal cloud, as it were, the ideal thought that
right.
that you can hold on to forever. All the other thoughts can come and go, but people hold on to these opinions as if they're holding on to their own clouds, but they're not the cloud. Ideas that they think represent reality that they can rely on, they think they can put their faith into, but if it doesn't serve them, then they've wasted their time.
Well, I think I think individually people don't have the fortitude to stand alone. I think they struggle to even within them own selves. What is so and so going to think about me? I think that's in the back of their mind. I don't know if that's part of the decision making, but and then there are people who get to the point simply as they're much older, and they're not interested. When I mean older, being 60 or 70 years old, they're not going to change because they're already settled in what they're going to be. I mean, they're not going to unless something like we call near-death experience happens, then that may change their perspective. But some people also, when you talk about sharing this information like near-death experience, the idea simply is, well, they made that all up.
Yeah.
There's always the people don't want to even question anything. They don't want to deal with it. It's as though it's going to rain on their sunny day.
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
It's going to rain on their sunny day. It's going to mean that I'm going to have to do something. It means I'm going to have to take responsibility for my own life. You see, it's I don't mean it it's sad. It's the saddest thing in the world, Phil. I look around and I'm not even where you're at, and I'm looking and I see certain things and I'm like, but I'm just all you gotta do is just look into it,
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm too busy, Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I'm too busy. And it's like, yeah. And what are you busy in? What are you doing?
I think that there's an expectation in general with people that it'll make its appearance when it's ready or something.
That's the interesting thing. So it's this whole miraculous this cloud we're up here.
Yeah, it's
your analogy that suddenly it will show up. Here it is.
Yeah.
Brand, here it is. See it? It's going to be on time. Here it is. So,
yeah, almost like it's a corruption of just the fact that we naturally process towards better understanding. And of course, if you naturally extrapolate that, it will automatically go to a point where there is full understanding. Just as a logic, it's just basic logic. And of course, I think people fundamentally realize that, and they just sort of carry on as if to say, well, at some point in the future, I will get there, but it's not now. And I won't make the effort to draw that moment closer to me and make it quicker. So that's the impression I get. I think people feel as though they can't do that when you can. You draw that point towards you by pursuing it, and you shorten the distance between you and it by doing so.
Right. It's like reeling in a fish.
Exactly like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just keep reeling it in, such and such.
Yeah.
And in other words, if you want to eat and have sustainable, the living food, so to speak, or living life, you keep drawing in by basically you pursuing it. You're pursuing it and dogmatically doing that. When meaning this simply is, I don't care what other people think about me. I could care less. It's not important what others think. This is what I'm looking for. So I'm going to continue to reel this in, so to speak, as a fish. And a fish is something you're going to be able to eat and sustain you in a way that it will give you life itself. If you're hungry. If you're hungry for the truth, you'll reel in that fish, so to speak, knowledge.
Yeah. That's right. And you will ask proper questions when you read scripture. You'll say, hang on a minute, is that really what that means? Because there's too much acceptance. Well, my priest says that's what that means, therefore that's what that means. I don't need to know for myself. He says it, therefore it must be true. All this sort of thing. Giving away your power to other people to give you the opinion that you're supposed to have or something. That's not a good idea.
Well, he's the expert. And it's like, well,
apparently.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if he's the expert, why is there so many priests involved in what I call sexual things? In other words, you to do with little boys and little girls. It's okay.
Right.
So, excuse me, they're not on a pedestal. Now,
Yeah.
whoa, okay, you're putting them on a pedestal. That is your responsibility, okay?
Yeah.
Because you've been already told, even by the media in some ways, that these people are not what you can be trusted, and yet you choose to trust these people
Hmm.
uh, by your own foolishness, your
Yeah.
own foolishness.
Yeah. Apparently, in the Catholic Church, priests used to get married, but they stopped it because when there were divorces, this is many years ago, um, the funds that belonged to the church apparently was split between the husband and the wife, and therefore the wife was making off with some of the church's possessions. Therefore, we have to stop marriage. We can't have priests get married.
We can't have that money being used in the wrong way. Is that
Right,
what you're
I
saying?
think that was the basis of stopping marriage with the with priests. But in the Church of England, they still get married and have normal families because it's considered to be normal and healthy psychologically because we
Yeah,
are still human.
right.
You know, we are not angels living in heaven. We are living on earth and we are living human lives. Therefore, there has to be a certain acceptance for what we have to put up with.
Uh, thinking about this. This is part of a movie, but it's interesting that this is how much power. This was a movie setting probably in the 1500s, and the church itself was immense. There was no other power against them except basically the king. Okay,
Mm.
so when those that started to speak out, that is the gentleman named Huss, Jan Hus, which was from Bohemia, or part of what we call maybe today Moravia. But he began to speak out against the Catholic Church. This is before Luther. This is over 100 years before Luther. Okay,
Mm.
and so his prince, his guy there in Bohemia, gave him safe passage to meet with the Catholic clergy to argue or talk about these deeper things, although it was in a literal perspective, you see. But eventually, what happened was they put him in a castle and began to subject him. And this is a Protestant view, so it may not be correct. I'm just saying what I've been told.
Mm.
And and what transpired simply was they were told they told went back to the king and says, "Yeah, if you don't get your act together, you're going to go to hell," basically. So they used that threat against the prince or king, and he was intimidated, and he gave up. In other words, to safe
Right.
passage. And eventually, this guy John Huss uh, was burned to the stake, just
Right.
like uh, what's his name, Tyndale in England, I think it is, who
Yeah.
was trying to put the God, instead of from Latin to English. And that was to see, this was all about power.
Yeah.
This is controlling, and this was an enormous power trying to. So another story, and eventually, what happened? There was a war. They took a war with the Huss. They become what they call the Hussites, and they fought against the Catholics. You see, and eventually they lost,
Yeah.
naturally, because they didn't have all the material and money wise to continue to fight a system of that nature.
Yeah.
But it was the other thing got the church used, and I'm not trying to badger the Catholic Church. I'm just basically trying to speak what I call how much power was in. There was no there was no vacuum here, so to speak. So what happened was simply is if there was a marriage to take place and there was a quote unquote a heretic that you had in your town, no funeral rites or marriages took place. So that
Mm.
meant simply is that people were not buried because Catholics had that power, you see, and
Yeah.
eventually forced people to give in. It was a tool that used to just
Yeah.
kind of break the fight against people. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's
Yeah.
I just want I what I just see is you know I see I see that a lot of people are who I even grew up with, they're not even interested in spiritual things because they think they got the answer. They think they've got the whole answer, and what they did many years ago as a child, it covers it. Everything is covered. My whatever I've done, my sins, Jesus covered me. He took care of me, and so there's no inkling of that. And then I remember a guy a couple of weeks ago coming to my house, and he delivered firewood to my house,
Yeah.
and it was and this is what I deal with with Christian people. I treat them as well as anybody else. I don't try to be mean to them anyway. But he was saying something. He quoted a verse to me, and I just said, I didn't say any more. And he says, well, uh, God blesses me, and I come to the understanding simply is it has no, sir. And I didn't say anything, but it's not about what you think it is. You
Mm,
see God blessing you because of material wealth. And
mm,
that has nothing to do with it at all
right.
because it's all spiritual. It's
Yeah.
to do with spiritual aspects. And
Yeah.
so you've been deceived in thinking that God is blessing you in what I call the blessings of having a job or making money or you're comfortable at an older age.
Mm,
You see that in a way that you think that God is blessing you, and that is actually detrimental to your soul. You see?
yeah. Yeah. That runs throughout Christianity. I mean, a lot of Christians say things like you just mentioned a minute ago, when they say things like, "My life is covered with the blood of Jesus."
Right,
You
right,
this kind of thing. It says in the Bible that if I'm a Christian, I'm protected by Jesus. But
right,
the entire Bible is an encyclopedia of everything to do with illumination, which comes from God. And that's what it's referring to when it says the blood of Jesus is on you when you're an illuminate. You are protected from all sorts of things as an illuminate, but not as someone who's simply been baptized and is reading these things out as if it applies to them when it doesn't. That's a very sad problem and issue. Like you're saying, the guy is deluding himself, thinking that the wealth and riches perhaps are a godly blessing when in fact poverty is considered to be a godly blessing because it's like the winter months. In winter, you're more wrapped up and inside and in your thoughts more. In the
right,
summer, we go out and we're more engaged with each other. There's
right,
more flirting, more potential for creating karma by making babies, but that doesn't happen so much in the winter. So there's an old association with winter and summer and the idea of physical poverty or riches. In summer, we feel rich. All the
right,
fruits have bloomed. We can eat the fruits of
right,
the trees. We,
right,
we can have sex with each other. We can enjoy the fruits of nature. But this indulgence can lead to your demise, obviously. And it's the withdrawing somewhat that allows you to think and contemplate. So anything that allows you to think and contemplate is more to do with spirituality. And the more money you have, the more engaged you are with doing stuff. I don't know if you've noticed, but rich people are always doing stuff. They're always
right,
buying something. They're going on a yacht. They're going to a party. They're socializing. Their life is happening or something,
right,
you know. And
right.
they think, well, my life is so exciting. Isn't everyone jealous? But they're not actually achieving anything,
No, no.
you know.
And you notice that that's also again the media hypes that up, saying, "Oh, look at all these things that the so and so is doing, such and such,
Yeah.
da da da." And it's
Yeah.
just
It's
like it's like
childish.
a PR program. It's just like
Yeah.
da da da.
Yeah. It's really
Um,
quite childish. Yeah. It really is.
so we
It's
were
for
you
young.
just go ahead,
Just
go
to
ahead.
say, it's for young men to dream. It's only
Right,
teenagers that look at women and that sort of thing in that sort of way. Do you see what I mean? When you're married, you don't look at them the same way. You know what they
right,
look like. You know what they
right,
are like. You
right,
don't think of it in the same way. But yeah,
right. Yeah, you were one of the questions I was going to ask was what are your thoughts to do with people who feel that uh, parents need to not have children these days? In other words, there's uh, the idea simply is that you're bringing this is the thoughts that I deal with even with my own family is to do with simply is that we're not going to have kids, because this is a bad place. So there's I hear some things now, people saying we maybe be better not to have children because simply this is a dark and ugly place, such and such.
Mm.
And I don't know if that's a cop out or if that's a bit of wisdom in one way. In some ways, I see it as a little bit what I call wisdom. We would want to bring people in here, but this is the only place. Although we're also told that the population is exploding, which it is in some way. Although I wonder sometimes if that's a programming, so to speak.
Mm.
But I notice simply is that um, there are more quote unquote souls here than they were, you know, since the 1980s or 70s when there were only 4 billion people supposedly on the planet. Now they're approximately going towards, 7.5 billion people.
Yeah.
Uh, and most of these people are in dire strait. Most of them are very poor people that
Yeah.
don't own anything, so to speak. So
Yeah.
I was just curious what your thoughts were on that. Um,
Yeah, but personally, I don't agree with not bringing children into the world, because what we're doing here is making heaven, and life gives you that opportunity. So that's how I see it. Personally, I've not had kids because I've never been able to afford to keep them or bring them up.
right,
I've never been in a position to do that financially. So I've never pursued it, and that's the only reason I've not pursued that, because I won't be able to back it up. Even if I wanted kids, I wouldn't be able to bring them up. See, because my life has not been geared towards that. But that's me personally.
right, right. Because
That's only me personally. It's just my, my view of my own life. I see what it is and why it is, and my life number is 33. I'm going to have the most difficult life, all this sort of thing, and I have the strength to cope with it.
right.
So I know that I'm not going to have kids probably. It's not an issue for me at all. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say about that.
But it's
People,
just I hear this I hear this I hear this in many places where I'm on Facebook, and I hear this whole idea. There's we've talked about this before in some
mm,
ways, but is that is they blame karma for everything. They blame, well, like for example, why is this child who comes into this world is already suffering? It has some type of illness or has some type of something it's going to deal with. And this person will say, "Oh, that's because their last time they were here, they did all kinds of bad things, and this is why they're here now, is they
yeah,
have to
no,
work their way out of it." And I'm like,
no,
is
no,
that a new age way of looking at it? Because I think it's a cop out in some
yeah,
ways.
that's
Um,
right, that's right.
it's because it's a hard answer. I feel like it's a hard question to answer. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that. Um, the people have the answers, like have many answers to this, like yeah, get karma because you do bad things here because it's such a you're being punished this lifetime. Plus, people are punished when they come back here. That is, to deal with that whole situation, or they're punished even here. So I'm trying to figure out is karma simply an Eastern idea, something because 30 or 40 years ago, I never heard of karma. And
Right.
is that part of the um, New Age thinking, or is that something else? Because that's a basic question for me.
Yeah, as usual, the word karma has become a byword for anything that goes wrong in your life. It must have been because you
Ah,
did something, whatever. Even if someone's done something randomly, if somebody kidnaps you when you go visit South America, apparently it's your fault if you're talking about karma, when it has nothing to do with you. People don't realize, I feel, that they become what they've done.
that's why. That's what I thought it was do. It popped in my head this morning. I said, "No,
Yeah.
they made a bad decision, and they don't want
Yeah.
to do that. They
They
don't want
don't
to deal with it,
realize,
and so they
people don't
pass it on to
realize
karma." Go
they
ahead.
literally become what they have done. Everything in life, overall, when you produce, there's a distinction between things that happen to you and things that happen because of you.
Ah, that's a good point. That's a
You
good
know what I
point.
mean? So this
Yeah.
karma, the idea of karma, only applies to the second one. What you've been doing has produced a certain result in you. For example,
Well, for
um,
example, how about if you spent all your money on stupid things instead of being wise with it? Now you're struggling to pay your bills.
yeah, that's a very excuse me, it's a very simple way
Right.
of looking at it. Yeah, karma.
Right.
But again, people don't realize that you might want to come into a life on earth to be an example to those around you of how to handle a bad situation. So there's a lot of learning in spiritual terms, in these terms, that whatever happens physically is only physical. And if you're spiritually oriented, if you have that higher view, you will show that to other people, and it helps them cope with their own problems by realizing there's more to existence than physical life. There is this issue, but people, as usual, oversimplify everything and think that, well, no matter what happens, it's because of you. It's your fault. Well, we could say that the entire universe is your fault.
Yeah, you could.
If
You
you
could.
want to go
Right.
there, you can blame somebody for the entire universe by saying, well, look, when you ascend, you're going to make a cloud whose physical aspect is going to generate this universe that we're in now. So it's your fault. You who ascended, I'm blaming you for this universe and its
Right.
horrors. It's
Right.
down to you. You made this happen because you ascended and you made the cloud that made the universe. It's your
Yes.
fault. So when you boil it down to that, the fundamental initial starting place of the universe, and realize, well, the universe is my fault. Can you forgive yourself?
Right.
Can
Right.
you forgive yourself? Well,
Right.
yeah, it is your fault, but you didn't intend that. And there's a whole story in Gnostic texts about Sophia and the fall of Sophia, and how she wept because she made Yaldabaoth, this monstrous demiurge, and look at what he's
Right.
done. Look at the mess he's made. You
Right.
can invent a whole story about that, but really, it's just a teaching method to show that this is what happens. This is just reality. This is how it works, and this is how it affects everything. Work within these boundaries, so to speak. And yeah, no, not when you're born into uh, a body that isn't quite right. If you have mental issues
Right.
that are physically based, or you haven't got any arms or legs, it's not your fault. How you
Right.
deal with it is down to you. That's the key issue with spirituality as well. How we deal with whatever we've been dealt with. So it doesn't matter what you dealt with; it's how you deal with it that counts. And this brings us back to the issue of how you develop yourself. What you do is what you become. So if I go around murdering people, I will become a murderer, and my spirit is that of a murderer. And everything that I respond to in the spirit world will respond to me accordingly. So I'll be rejected by the spirit world if that's the case. You see what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah.
what you are is how people treat you as well. If
Right.
you're a psychopathic murderer, you're not going to be treated with respect and warmly welcomed, are you?
Right.
The
Right.
same thing applies to spirituality and people who are in the spirit world, as it were. They're not just going to accept you. There's all sorts of things to fathom there, because there's a difference in perspective as well. From physical point of view, it's like this. From spiritual point of view, it's like that. There's a complete dichotomy between those two perspectives for a start. So if we want to fathom these things and what's the best way to approach them, what's the best way to think about them, we have to fathom all these issues in our own mind. And who knows about the spirit world? Who does, apart from near-death experiences? How can
Right.
anyone fathom things properly in the first place is another issue. It's just endless problems when it comes to figuring out truth, I have found. It's probably why I took so long over it, because I wanted to make absolutely sure. But yeah, I understand why people fail. I understand why people don't get it. But I'd like to, but why is there only my voice? Where are all
Right.
the other people? For goodness
Right.
sake, I'm trying to
And it,
find them so we can get together and become a bigger voice. But I don't
right.
find them. I
I
don't
think
find them.
that's the discouragement to you that you mentioned earlier on when we were talking, that you felt that simply there were other angels here like
Yeah,
you,
loads,
and
loads.
you're basically asking yourself, I think, in some way, where are they? What's going on?
Well, I do know some of them, and I've met quite a few more. But with angels, there's a real independence thing with an incarnated angel. They are simply doing their own thing. You can't expect them to all come together. I just thought it would be nice to um, have some confirmation on the issue of ascension, I would have
Right.
thought some of the others would do this as well and would be available to talk to at the same sort of time. But
Right.
obviously that's not happened so far. And it's been 9 years. So I just wonder, it also makes you wonder how rare this event really is. You know, I don't think it should be rare, but it is rare for various reasons.
Is it because we live in, which I think that if I look at history and everything, everything is, and I don't, even though maybe thinking this rosy. So uh, it seems as though ever since the collapse, supposedly, that is that what took place in Egypt was the golden era, so to speak. And ever since that time period, everything has gone back into what I would call, lack of a better word, is dark ages. People are not able to think. And for example, basically uh, from the 200s, so to speak, or even further back, but basically just say 200 to roughly the Renaissance, there was a blooming of some things taking place in Europe, that is in the Western world. But was that in the Eastern world? Well, we don't know that, or we haven't been told that, or I'm sure there has been. Um, but and then now we see simply is that in our mind frame is that even though I've only been here 60 some years, so only I can tell you what has happened since I've been here, so to speak. That is, and that's another thing simply is we don't live a long, long time, so to speak. And if those that do live a long time, um, don't seem to actually recollect and to pursue those things also themselves, because it seems as though there's some parts of my family that have lived to be nearly 100 years old, but there was there wasn't any so-called wisdom in anything they shared, you see. um, and so the longer your life doesn't mean you're actually, and then actually the other thing simply is that you're only going to be able to, in order to actually have any effect in your life spiritually, it has to take place in your head. You got to be able to think. You got to be able to use your noggin to a point, because without that, if you're not able to use that, then you're stuck again. You see, you're not able. And so, and I was with family, like I said. Um, to me, I observed what was going on, and it is, I'm there, um, and it made me feel. It's made me feel sorrow in my heart, because they they believe what they've done somehow is going to be enough, and it's not going to be enough. And
No.
um, and
It,
there's no sense in me saying anything to these people. They've already
yeah,
made up their mind. You see,
I,
this
I, I
already.
find I find that very strange because it does say quite a few times, even in the New Testament. I've got a quote in my recent book. I think it's from the New Testament, where it literally says, "You have to make heaven while you live. You can't make it when you're dead." Um,
No,
and it says that in the New Testament, and I don't understand why people don't realize that.
because
You have
people in the church read what they want to read and discard the other. In other words, they don't. Um, they choose what they're picky about what they read. They
Yeah,
don't
that's
read
right.
certain. This is something that I've seen in the church in many ways. Is that they choose what they believe. Phil, they choose what they like, the good part, but they don't like to read the other part. And you'll notice that even pastors and preachers, they won't preach about certain issues in the Bible. They never even
Yeah,
touch those subjects.
yeah, they
They never
can't.
touch those subjects. They
Yeah,
don't touch, for example, the area of the poetry that's in the Bible, the Song of Solomon, Ecclesiastics. They hardly even touch the Psalms, so to speak, because part of it, I think, they don't want to deal with the sexual issue
mm,
of these things that are taking place, and there's nothing wrong with that. But see, they've been taught, and no, we're not going to talk about these things. So I've got a couple of questions here from somebody here.
Mm.
A gentleman named Substance for the Soul here is perhaps karma has a omnipresence quality in the sense that us as humans are not capable of understanding the entire and the intricate patterns and connections that karma is. But if one can trust what, and then he stopped. But if one can trust what, in other words, can you trust anything such and such is what I'm speculating.
Mm.
And if you want to answer that question now, we can do that. He's got a couple more questions.
That's a fundamental question, isn't it? I mean, if you're looking for truth, how are you going to trust it? How are you going to trust that you find it? What is
Right.
it about finding
That's what
truth
we've been
that
talking about. Right. Go ahead.
that tells you found the truth? You know, is it just another thing that you found and you think, well, I'm going to label that the truth, and I'm going to go around telling people, look, I found the truth. You know, and if anyone shows me something that's above that, I'm going to completely ignore it because I'm a bit frightened that I haven't found the truth really. You know, but
Right.
yeah. I think the issue of redundancy is what confirms things for you. For example, the Book of Exodus is the root condition of our reality, repeated over and over again as if it's a continuous story. But in fact, it's the same scenario repeated every single paragraph. And you don't know that until you've seen the scenario. So when you see the scenario and you read the book again, you realize what it's doing. It's repeating the same picture over and over again, one after another. I don't know how many times it does it, but it does it from start to finish. That's a redundancy. That redundancy tells you and confirms to you that you've actually understood it. In the same way that if you listen to Bilbo's riddle about
Right.
horses standing on a red hill, they champing and stamping and standing still, when you realize he's talking about teeth, the
Right.
entire poem that he's revealed there makes perfect sense to you. And you know that it makes perfect sense because now you've understood what it's talking about. So in the same way, when you meet God, you know damn well you're meeting God. You know, if somebody
Right.
says, "How do you know you met God?" Are you kidding me? How do you know you exist? Of course, it's you know when you're going to meet God because it's God. Nothing,
Well,
nobody else can.
yeah, not only that, you experience it. That's the only
Yeah,
thing you can give. I mean, and
yeah,
the problem says, well, then why don't you? That's that someone would say, well, why don't you write a book? Well, okay, I wrote a book. I wrote many
yeah,
books, and
yeah.
yet people are they. I think yeah. So let me continue on with his. He continues asking this question here. Um, so it's the same guy. There's three questions from the same guy. Substance for the soul. Resonates and in turn trusts that the resonance is of the divine design, then I would suppose one, quote, let go needed to know a quote unquote black and white karma and uh, free themselves to go with the flow of karma. Perhaps that process within itself could initiate a true understanding of the subject. And he's got another one here. I'm sorry. Not to lose my voice for some reason.
Mm.
This is one full statement. Chat will only let me send a few sentences at a time. Okay, I didn't know that. I am a female. Um, Phil knows me. Okay, all right.
I recognize the channel name. Yeah.
And then the last one simply is great discussion, guys.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
um, so I'll tell you my own story because from my perspective, Phil knows this. I ask a lot about the Bible. I also refer a lot to Christianity because that's where I came from. That's where I thought I had the truth all my life for over 40 some years of my life. Even though there were things that simply is, I began even at my age and 30 years old, began to ask questions in my Sunday school class and even began to say, this doesn't make sense. And I even went to my pastor, who was a singles pastor, and he couldn't answer I actually found I got frustrated. You can't answer my question. I'm going to the top. And so I met, this was a church of roughly 1,500 people. So it's a large church. And it had
Mm.
two services during the morning and one at night. And and he said, you can't do that. And I says, oh, yes, I can. I go here. I'm a member of this church and I want to know the answer. I want to find out. That's my business, such and such. So he told me certain things, and I said okay, but I didn't agree with him, and that made me move in a direction. Simply let me pursue seminary, let me find out.
Hmm.
But I knew that I didn't want to be a preacher or pastor because I felt simply as they were towing the line. I felt that simply they were not genuine.
Yeah.
All pastors, they are
Did you
actually they're managers of people. That's what they are. They're like a sort of what we call a shepherd. But the problem simply is they don't want to disturb the flock. You see,
yeah.
because
Did you want to understand it in a way that you could stand on it and be authoritative with it, and you didn't accept it because you couldn't be that?
I saw things that in what I would call, first of all, it had to do with the denominational beliefs that basically I've grown up in many different churches, so to speak, denominations, different viewpoints. And this particular church was the Presbyterian Church, and it was a
Mm.
conservative Presbyterian church, what they call PCA, for the
Mm.
Presbyterian Church of America. And they would emphasize the inerrancy of the Bible. So they would never, that's the protocol or perspective of how they think, is that there's nothing wrong with Scripture. Okay, so it's God's word. All of it's God's word. It's stamped, da 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 da. But what I was seeing was something that was being brought in at first, because he said something that you can be a perfection, you can be perfect. And I knew that he was quoting from some other group. And I began to look into that particular group. And I'm like, that has nothing to do with Presbyterians. And so that was where all this kind of stem started. And as I continued to pursue this, I became irritated because I was basically being pushed away as though you're wasting somebody's time. And I'm like, no, you're not. I'm not. I'm wasting my time and wasting my money if I can't get an answer here. So I was
Mm.
frustrated in a way that made me become dog-minded, or maybe frustrated with something, because I began to see certain things that didn't add up. That was the first part. And then I went to another. I actually left that church and went to another particular Presbyterian church, which is called the ARP, which is Associate Reformed Presbyterian, which is called they're basically, their roots are more Scottish, even though the other group's Scottish too. But the point simply is, it's a group. It's much smaller group than this particular group. And anyway, the whole point simply is, when I get into seminary, I began the church history is the one that hit me. It wasn't systematic theology, because I kind of said, okay, I understand this stuff. That makes sense, da da da. But I took it for its face value. I didn't deal with it. But
Mm.
church history, when I started studying early church history, the patristic era, things started unraveling, and that's the key. I think this is, for me, it began to share. Wait a minute, whoa, 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 whoa. Why are these heretics around? Okay, no one told me that about that in church here at all. Why is this guy, Montius, why is he suddenly being, he's in trouble with the church, you know? And why is this guy, Augustine is involved? Where did he get his theology? And then, see, I started and I said, well, guess what? He's from, he's a Manichaean. And so all I knew, and simply at that point, was Manichaeans who basically divided things simply: flesh is bad, spirit's good. And I saw, well, that's dualistic. I even recognized that, even though it's very simplistic for
Yeah.
me. But it began to lay the groundwork. I said, wait a minute. And then Augustine was involved in what I call, he was a Manichaean. That was what he believed before. And
Right.
I felt that somehow he was bringing those ideas from the Manichaeism doctrines into the church.
Yeah.
And I think that is true in somewhat. But also I saw something even more deadly, was this whole thing we just talked about, is that the power base at this time place is like the 300s or 400s. So almost a ton of people are in the church in Northern Africa. This is the power base in Christianity. It is also in the Middle East, in parts of also in the Rome. But
Mm.
the majority, if not more, are actually in Africa, Northern
Mm.
Africa. And Augustine is in Northern Africa. He served there as a bishop.
Mm-hmm.
And he began to, he lost, he, to me, he went overboard. Meaning simply is that he felt simply is he spoke out against these groups and that groups, and he began to form the theology of the whole church.
Right.
He is the complete backbone of all churches that are in the West.
Yeah.
I don't care who you go to. You go to the Greek Orthodox. Naturally, we've talked about these things, so I'm going to get a little bit excited. But I kept uncovering things that did unravel, and it kept me asking more questions. And it
Mm.
just got to the point simply is there's something's wrong here. And
Yeah.
so I began to no, seminary is not for me. I can't teach this. I cannot
Mm.
teach these things.
Yeah.
So these are steps as I see it in some way. Maybe it's a lack of a good, maybe in a poor analogy of Jacob's ladder. Okay, well that doesn't work. I've gone that ladder up that piece. Let me go up this ladder and see what this says. And so I began to
Mm.
pursue other things
Yeah.
involved with astrology and other such and such. And I said no, that's it's kind of like it, but it's not. And so I kept pursuing it and kept digging. I've never stopped.
Mm.
I'd chew on it for a while, as you would say earlier. And the point simply was that um, that's not it.
Mm.
And I even mess with you. I mess with other people, leaders, even in the Zen movement. And
Mm.
no, that's not it neither, because I see things here. So what I'm looking at, if you're truly someone that's guy is together, and if I read what you're saying or talking to me, and then I see something's a red flag to me, and then I ask about it, and you don't answer it, then that means something's wrong. And it
Yeah.
means simply is that I need to either move away from this group
Yeah.
because it's a red flag. I call it a red flag.
Yeah. Sure.
If you quote unquote saying such and such, da 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 da, and then I look at it and say, okay, and then I thought this Richard Rose guy was one, such and such, and that was all about Zen, and even Gurdjieff and all this stuff. And I've had the opportunity that most people don't have, and I feel that I have far more given more than most people have been given. I've been given the opportunity to pursue these things that most people don't have the time. A lot of times
Mm.
people spend, they work all their lives and they never even pursue these things till later in their life. And suddenly, I got to hurry up and find out the answer. And I'm not saying there's anything against that either.
Yeah.
But it's simply for me, simply is that I just kept seeing things and I'm saying, okay, that doesn't line up. You said such and such here. This doesn't line up. Now, wait a
Mm.
minute, what's going on here? And so
Mm.
that's how this all has come from me. And I
Yeah.
think simply is that, and I'm not yet there. I'm not going to claim that. And I keep learning from you, and I want to learn as much as I can. That's why I dig these things and I share these things. I share these things on internet
Mm.
for others to maybe look into these things.
Mm.
That's my whole part of my goal is to share that, but it's also to educate myself and understand the knowledge of it. You
Mm-hmm.
see,
Yeah.
and
Sure.
and so I'm not. I guess I'm a rare person. I am Aries. I've been given what I call certain things in my life.
Mm.
To my name, Brant, means I think I've shared that with you is a sword, and that
Mm-hmm.
sword is to divide what is true and false,
Yeah. Right.
what is right and true, and
That's right.
and I will get the sword out and I say that is. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be mean or anything. That's not my, but that's not true.
Yeah.
That's not true. You
Yeah.
can't say that. It's
It's
not true.
fascinating. It's what's fascinating is that we're in that position that we don't know and that we're trying to find out. You
Right.
know, why are we born into that? Surely we should know the truth already. Surely everyone around us should have established it already, and it should
Well,
be what life is.
I
But it's
think that
not.
I think for myself simply is um, I'm single. I'm not married. I have I have responsibility to myself. Parties say,
Mm.
well, why don't you get married? I don't want to get married because
Mm.
I at this point, that's not my pursuit.
Yeah.
That's not the ultimate truth here. This is
Yeah.
not my goal.
Yeah,
You see,
sure.
my goal is truth. I don't want anything else. You see,
No.
if that comes in afterwards, such and such, fine. But that's not the priority here. You
Yeah.
see, and
Yeah.
so they're what I call things that come in your life, so to speak, and you decide if you want that or not. And if it's
Hmm.
going to, is it going to move me closer to truth? Then I'm for it. If it's not, or it's going to maybe be a stumbling block, no, I don't. I don't
Mm.
want to. I don't want to be a stump. And someone said, "Well, that's being picky." Well, that's yeah. I have to be
Yeah.
picky if I want to know
Yeah.
the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
That's
got
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Very good.
because and so I find that almost 99.9% of the people out there don't have any idea what I'm talking about, and that's okay. I'm also what I call I am throwing seed. I am I'm broadcasting it, so to speak. That's what broadcasting means, throwing it
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
and whoever is meant to hear it, they will hear it. They will hear
Yeah.
the
Sure.
truth.
That's right.
And if they don't, that's not my responsibility. So
That's right.
you
That's right.
see,
Yeah.
um, but
Yeah.
anyway, I got on a diatribe here. So,
No,
but
no,
it's
no.
just
It's fascinating. No.
it's just a story of my life, and
Yeah.
it's a blessing to get up every day and to you know I have all these things that I like you Phil differently than you. I have all these things that I'm trying to figure out because I'm reading a lot of stuff and I'm like, oh, I see what they're talking about here. I
Mm.
see how it's it is a snare what these people did in the early church. What
Mm.
took place is what they created a system that actually was a snare to actually cause darkness spiritually for people.
Yeah.
You see, and they
Even
took on
even
the
if
right.
that wasn't even if that wasn't the intention, that's the
No,
result of it.
right. The
Yeah.
result of it, yes. It seems as
Yeah.
though at first it seemed as though it's a good idea to share this
Uh-huh.
stuff. As far as what I can tell from the readings I've been reading,
Yeah.
there was an idea simply as we need to share this out more openly instead of actually through mystery schools.
Yeah.
And but the problem is simply is as far as I can tell, there were not the right kind of people in charge. They eventually used that to benefit themselves and have power
Yeah.
over others,
Yeah.
and to not even themselves not finding the truth. It didn't matter. It was their whole um, the whole idea of having power over people is a major deal with some people. And
Yeah.
others would
Sure.
be, I'd be able to have money and be able to do what I want to do, such and such. You see, so
That's
these
right.
are all snares or ways
Yeah.
to simply keep you from getting to the truth. And you make those decisions. You see,
Right.
you choose that.
That's
No
right.
one forces that in your face. No one says,
That's
well, you can get, you're going to do this such and such. No, you choose that. You make
right. Hmm.
that's your free will. God
That's right.
gives you free will.
That's right.
And so, but yet, as I saw in what I call the church and what it does, they deny free will. They deny
Mm.
it in a way that says, "Oh yeah, you have free will," but yet it's subjective. And I'm like, well, then it's not completely free will. You mean
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
God doesn't? You mean that God doesn't trust you to be able to make your own decision here? Is that what
Yeah.
he's saying?
Right.
You
Yeah.
see, so you see what you're doing here? You're manipulating this whole thing.
That's
You're
right.
you're disguising it. And you're fooling people. You're not being
That's right.
above the you're not being above approach, but you're also lying to people because if
Yeah.
you're not speaking truth, the whole truth,
Yeah.
you are keeping truth from others.
Effectively. Yeah.
That's
That's right.
that's very that's
Yeah.
not very good. That's not
That's
good.
right. That's right.
Not good at all. And
Yeah.
so um,
True.
so there's a hunger for truth in my life, and
Yeah.
I, I talked about the whole issue with others, some people with duality, and people, they don't understand, they don't see that you're supposed to be single-minded.
Right.
Even Scripture says that.
Yeah. That's
You have
right.
to be single-minded. It
Yeah.
says, what is it? It doesn't say double-minded. What does it say? Yeah, it does say double-minded. I think that's in Paul. Some of the stuff he talks about. Maybe I'm
Mm.
wrong. But you being double-minded, you must be single-minded. Also, the hand to the plow is an illustration of simply being single-minded. It's
Yeah.
Your focus is here, not on everything else. You see,
That's right.
and
Yeah.
so that's part of the
Absolutely.
singularity. You see, and
Yeah.
we come here. We come here with what I would call, as lack of a better word, there's a divine spark within ourselves,
Yeah.
and we try to dismiss that, but that's part of the other part is your flesh, and so this duality within your own self. You see,
Yeah, that's right.
that's the whole thing too. That's the dilemma that goes on. So why am I
That's right.
double-minded here?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
And if I'm
Absolutely.
double-minded, that means that simply I'm not on the right foundation. Because if I'm on the right foundation, I will be single-minded.
That's right.
I would have a base. It would be solidified and solid. It won't
Yeah,
be up and down all over the place like a seesaw. You
that's
see?
it. That's absolutely true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Well,
anyway, I kind
well,
of got
well,
off at a tangent here.
no, no,
Sorry.
very good. Very
Uh,
good.
um,
Yeah,
but that's my life story,
yeah.
um, and a lot of people say, "Well, is he gone crazy?" Like, I don't care what you
I
think. I
don't think
really
so.
don't. I don't give a damn what you think of me. I don't care.
Yeah, yeah,
Because the point simply is my focus is here.
yeah.
My focus is this. It's not about all this other stuff because it doesn't. It's this wheat, hay, and stubble. It doesn't satisfy.
Sure.
It doesn't
Yeah,
satisfy.
that's
You see,
right. That's right.
and God has given us all a mind to use.
Yeah,
He's given us a mind to use. Use
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Use it. You know,
Absolutely.
don't make excuses.
Yeah, that's right. There's no need. Yeah, there's no need.
I don't want to do this. Well, you're making excuses. You're making
That's right.
excuses.
Yeah.
You're
Even
given this life. You have an opportunity. Go ahead. Go on.
even making an excuse that you can't do something. You
Yes,
know. But,
right. You already didn't. You already said no.
yeah,
You've already said no.
that's right.
And I
That's
think
right.
that simply, I have done that in my past. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm not going to lie to anybody. There's no point in
yeah.
it. I made mistakes such and such. I know that.
Right.
I made a ton of them. You
Yeah.
see,
Same.
but
Yeah.
God is good enough. Simply is to continue. It's even knock at the door, ask, seek.
Yeah. That's right.
I'm persistent. I want the
Yeah. Yeah.
truth.
Yeah.
You want the truth, so that when you're looking at you're knocking the door, it means that you're persistent. You're
Yeah.
not giving up. But
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
people give up. They don't try anymore. They quit.
Yeah. You'll get there because the truth is always true, and it'll never change, and it'll always be there for you. Always.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not even content until I to do this. I guess, and I it's a gift. I guess because I
Yeah.
feel like it's a gift from God to
Yeah.
have this persistence,
Yeah. Yeah.
pursue these things,
Yeah.
um,
Right.
and because I look around me and no one's eager to this.
I know.
They've
I know.
already got the quote unquote package, and
Yeah. Sure.
they think it's the truth, and it's really
Yeah.
sad. It's so
It is.
stinking sad,
It
you
is.
know.
That's right.
Um, and you don't. The other thing simply is that I have one friend besides you. I have a friend. We talk a little bit about this, and she says something. And she says, "Yeah, there's no that part of the trial here on this planet is that there's no one to talk about these deeper things.
Mm,
There's
mm.
no one who you can go and talk to and just delight in talking about deeper things."
Yeah, sure. Openly, and they know. Yeah, that's right.
Right,
It's rare.
right. Because how can I have any dialogue with anyone who doesn't understand this? Because they're not on the same ground
Yeah,
I'm on, so to speak, or they're,
yeah,
vice versa.
that's right.
And so there is no common bond, so to speak, you see,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
yourself and that person. So
Right.
you can only
Yeah,
go so far. And
that's
and you know, I think that people when they make mistakes they blame others, but reality simply is that
mm,
no, you made that mistake.
yeah,
You fell for that, and you have
yeah,
to deal with it.
that's right.
And that's part of life. And I struggle with the thing what you just said. No, it's not about teaching it, but it seems to be the only way. It's just like as we've talked about earlier, Phil, about the whole idea of sticking your finger on a hot plate, so to
Yeah,
speak, an oven. I mean, a
yeah,
stove. Oh, I ain't doing that anymore. That hurt.
yeah,
You see.
yeah.
And
There
I
you go.
think that, and somehow that even when you do that with relationships, oh, I got hurt there. I don't want to do that again. I don't want to
Yeah,
make that kind of mistake in a relationship here. Da, da, da.
yeah,
Whatever it
yeah.
is to deal with, such and such. Oh,
That's right.
but also simply is that I guess part of me is always as I think I shared this a little bit quick with you. I remember just reading. I wanted to know a lot of things about what took place here in the Civil War as a kid, as a young kid, and then I eventually bought what I call save up my money and buy a World Almanac, and I would read it because I wanted the facts. Just give me the facts, okay? Tell me, give me the story here, such and such, about a certain
Yeah.
country, da da da. And so I
Yeah.
ate that stuff up. So that's part of who I am. I don't want a theory. I want the
Yeah.
fact.
Right.
You see. So,
That's
so
right.
that's just who I am. So,
Yeah. Like
but
solid food. Yeah.
yes. Yeah. So I do
Yeah.
come from a different background than you because you come in from a very scientific perspective, and I come from a very religious background, so to speak.
Mm.
But
Mm.
both are actually aiming for the same thing and the truth itself,
Yeah.
the goal,
That's right.
so to speak.
That's right. Absolutely true. Yeah.
And so I don't. Again, I'm looking at the time. It's roughly right at two
Yeah.
hours here.
That's
So I
right.
don't
Yeah.
want to keep. There
We've
is
got to
someone here. Like, let me. If any, I see someone else is on here. If you want to say something, it's your chance. If you want to say something at this point. If not, we're going to probably close the program
Mm.
because it's been 2 hours. So, but I appreciate everyone that's been here, such and such.
Yeah.
Um, I will say something else. I made a video in between what you did and did a video, share some things.
Yeah.
I can't believe how many views I got. I got over roughly over 700 views on it.
Whoa. Nice.
Um,
Yeah. Good.
and so what happened when people, I don't know what they did or what happened. I don't even know who the people were, but many people got upset with what I was sharing. And they said, well, who are you? Are you God? I said, I never claimed to be God. Never said
Yeah.
anything of that nature. So I seen somehow touched a nerve with somebody or people, and
Mm.
either passed on with somebody else because this was roughly a week, maybe probably 10 or 12 days ago. I just kind of said things off my top of my mind. I got
Right.
it out.
Yeah.
And I got people who don't even have any videos. In other words, I knew this was an attack in some ways, but when they did that, it apparently caused other people to pursue that also.
Right.
There were some people who actually said, "I appreciate you sharing this." So, but obviously, with I'm not buttering myself up. It's just simply
Mm.
seems to be I said something and it jarred some nerves on people.
Yeah.
Um, and
So,
I live in a country that's still somewhat very religious here,
mm.
and so I'm sure that bothers people such and such. And
Right.
I find it. One other thing I'll say is I find it really it's really hard to go to be around family because family has no idea what's going on with me.
Mm.
They think I've lost my marbles, so to speak.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
so what?
Oh
So
well.
what?
Mm.
So so
You
let
haven't.
me ask a question. When do you want to meet? Do you want to meet next week? Is that okay, or what's the deal?
Yes. Okay. That's okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all right.
When is a
We'll do it on email if that's okay. We'll organise it on email. Don't say
okay?
anything because something happened this morning. I think
Oh,
it was in preparation for the fact that we were coming on here.
oh,
I, I,
okay.
I think somebody is sending me like certain kind of spells. Anyway,
Oh,
so we'll keep it between us and see what
okay,
happens next week.
okay, okay. No problem. Okay.
Strange.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I
Thank you very
appreciate your
much
help.
for being a. Thanks for being the one who went out into the woods and started being the trailblazer, so to speak. So how about
That's
that? So,
right. Well, what can you do?
okay. Well,
What else?
I'll be in contact with you the next few days, and we'll set up
Sure.
something. Okay.
Okie
Okay.
dokie. Yeah.
All
Nice
right.
one. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Phil, for listening. I think I
My
talked for the
pleasure.
last 30 minutes. I'm sorry. I just kind of got
That's
wound
right.
up.
No,
So,
all
okay.
fascinating. Very, very
Yeah.
useful stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very
Okay.
good.
All right. Well, have
Thanks.
a good weekend. Okay.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Brian. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone, for
Phil.
being there. Thank you. Take
Okay.
care, everyone.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.